Hey everybody, it is Pastor Andy, Pastor John, and we are looking to work through another issue that you might be experiencing with your small group. And one of the experiences that we're hearing about is getting through some of the questions in such a way to where it doesn't seem so laborious. And so today we want to kind of walk you through what that might look like and help you get through a small group in a very seamless and discussion-oriented way.
That's good.
So I'm going to ask you some questions, Pastor John, and maybe you can kind of help me through how this might look like.
I hope so.
What would you suggest, first and foremost, that we do not do in a small group? What is a small group not supposed to look like?
That's a good question, Pastor Andy, and thank you. What I would suggest is that when you sit down with your notes, first of all, don't not look at them before you walk into the small group as a facilitator. It shouldn't be your first time seeing these as you walk into the group. So you also don't want to just read straight from the questions. It's not a test.
So you're saying that if I walk into a small group only having 5 minutes to look at this before is bad.
It could be bad.
That's bad.
It could be bad.
Okay.
It could go poorly.
What do you recommend I do?
I would recommend what you do is you want to sit down. You're taking people on a journey, right? So you're going on a trip through the message, and there's principles that are going to be pulled out of the message. So you want to sit down. I'm not saying you have to spend 2 hours preparing, but take a little bit of time to review all the questions, and maybe pull out 3 or 4 that you want to make sure you get to.
So it's okay not to read every single question
That's
on the sheet.
That is a good. There's a up here. It says here. The goal isn't to answer all the questions. So what you want to do is you want to not answer all the questions, but you want to get to know each other. That's our goal. It's not. It's blowing your mind.
It's mind-blowing.
It's amazing. I know. It's amazing. It's mind-blowing. But what I'd suggest is to have a map. Treat it like a map. And like I said, you want to take people on a journey. So any journey, you have to start with a destination. So you have a starting place and a destination, and you want to know where you're going to go in order to get to that destination.
That's good. That's good. Now, speak a little bit to the issue that we find ourselves as leaders, especially if maybe our group is kind of new and they're not too familiar with each other, and so there's maybe a little bit of awkwardness kind of going along as we begin to gel as a group, and that takes a little bit of time. But as a leader, sometimes I found myself the first night that we had our small group, that I found myself just kind of monopolizing the conversation.
Yeah.
And here I am just talking, and just, it's like, anyone? Bueller?
Yeah.
Bueller? And I had nothing. So
that's a problem.
What do you recommend that I do with that?
What you want to do is, instead of becoming the answer man or the go-to, you want to provide opportunities for people to speak up and not be scared of the silence, is what I'd say. Oftentimes I do the same thing. My wife just pointed that out for my last small group session, that you want to leave time for silence to get to brew and let people think and let people speak up. So you're not the go-to just because you're the facilitator.
So maybe in doing that, I need to ask questions a little bit different.
You want to ask you want to ask open-ended questions, not yes/no questions.
So if I ask, "Do you love Jesus?"
Yes.
That gets really awkward.
Yes, it can.
So
quickly.
maybe we can ask it in a little bit of a different way.
You want to ask it in an open way.
Okay.
You know.
All right. So what about this? Is moving into the sermon notes, and especially getting people to the place to where they are engaging back in the notes and thinking through the message that they may have heard maybe 5 days earlier. Or in our case, our group is on Fridays. And so it literally has been 5 days since they've heard the message and probably are needing to get back into gear into the mind of remembering what the message was about. So part of it is moving conversation to where we can kind of get back there. And my question to you is, how do you advise us to move from just kind of, hey, where we are gathering and just getting together and we just, munched on some munchies and now we're moving into the small group time? How do we get from out just working in the world, doing things that we're doing in the world every day, and doing life, and then coming into the small group and getting to this place?
Sure. There's that's a really good question. You know, we've provided people with groups with tools in order to help a transition where, for example, my group would start with the chit chat section, the getting to know each other informally with snacks for 10 minutes. And then what we do is we end up, we'll go into a time of prayer, basic prayer, where we're praying for the evening, usually led by myself or my wife. And then we'll go into worship, which helps center our minds and get us on the right page. Still, the awkwardness can be there. How do you just jump into the sermon notes without it being a study or some kind of weird? You don't want it to be a lecture class.
Yeah.
So you'll see that there's oftentimes in a box up at the top of your notes suggestion on a broad question.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a personal question for people to explain, and it's also pointed at getting to know people better.
Yeah, and they might be able to share their opinions and
That's
be
right.
able to kind of work within that broad question with the idea of funneling them into more of the directed questions that are found in the sermon notes.
That's right.
That's good. That's good. You know, one of the things that we did in our small group this past week, and it seemed to go really well, is I created a number of about me questions.
That's good.
And in fact, I've got that, and if you want to share it, maybe
Yeah.
with small groups, we can kind of include that as an added document along with
Sounds
the
good.
email. So feel free to use it. What we did is we only took a portion of it, because I'm looking to do a portion at a time each different week. And so in that portion, it was about, I think, hobbies and interests are what we covered. And in their hobbies and interests, we had them write it down, take about 5 minutes to do that, and then I had them share it with one other person that they did not know. Well, this week, guess what? I'm going to take those 5 same questions, have them write them down again, and share it with another person
There you
that
go.
they didn't share it with last time. So as to kind of keep, again, these questions not only fresh, but we're learning about one another in such a way that connections are being formed.
And that's the important part, is we're not trying to fill each other's head with biblical knowledge, which is great. But the goal of these groups right now is to, we really want to be getting to know our brothers and sisters in Christ.
Yeah.
We want to get to know each other and get intimate with each other. And part of that is you got to start with interests.
Yeah, and the idea is that when trust is formed and when bonds are formed, then that's when stuff starts to get a little bit more real down
That's
the
right.
road. Because honestly, we can talk about all this stuff, but if we don't trust one another, I guarantee we're not going to be honest about our conversations.
You got that.
But if the trust is there and we're developing that trust, and that always comes with time, and oftentimes it's very slow, just depending on the nature of the relationship, then that's when we're going to be able to get real with one another. And that just takes time, doesn't it?
It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time. Longer than 10 weeks.
Yeah. But that's okay, because we're going to do it again in January.
We're going to do it again in January.
It's all good.
And sooner. So, any more questions?
I think that was a good start. So if it's all right, we're going to maybe just say goodbye this time, and we'll cover more next week.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Bye. Woohoo.